And joining me now is Democratic Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland. Senator Cardin sits on the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks so much for being with us again. We appreciate it. Your heart breaks, obviously, listening to Paul Whelan. If Russia sticks to what seems like this impossible request, though, to free this prisoner in Germany who isn't under our jurisdiction, what does the U.S. do to get Whelan home? And I guess, what do you say to Paul Whelan?
Well, Jim, first, it's good to be with you. And of course, we want to get all Americans who are inappropriately detained back here in the United States. So we're very pleased that Brittany is back in the United States. We will continue to do everything we can to bring Paul back home. That's what we do. We recognize other countries are using leverage to try to hold Americans that are wrong. We think they should release them. And we will do everything we can to bring these people back home. So we'll never give up on Paul until he's back here in the United States.
And when it comes to the prisoner swap of Brittany Griner for that Russian arms dealer, Victor Bout, some Republicans, including the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, were deeply critical. Let's listen to that.
I'm glad an American's coming home. She was arrested for a trumped-up charge. But to exchange the merchant of death for this? It's made us weaker, it's made Putin stronger, and it's made Americans more vulnerable.
Senator, what's your reaction to that?
Well, negotiations are always challenging. I'm glad that we were able to get Brittany back home. This Victor Bout was in prison for 15 years. You have to deal with what we can deal with. So the bottom line is we got the American back home.
And what about the long-standing concern that these high-profile prisoner exchanges could incentivize nations unfriendly to the U.S. to imprison Americans under false pretenses?
They don't need any incentive to do that. We already see they look for any excuse to detain an American. That's why we have travel advisories, and we advise Americans not to travel to these countries. So we know there's a risk factor, and regardless of exchanges, that Americans are at risk. Follow the State Department's advice, and if it's a country that is at high risk of detaining an American, you shouldn't go to those countries.
And just to follow up on that, we were talking to the head of the WNBA's Players Union in the last hour, and we were talking to her about whether or not it's a good idea for women's basketball players. They go to Russia to earn more money because of the pay disparity between the NBA and WNBA. Do you think it's a good idea for women's professional basketball players to be going over to Russia, American professional athletes to be going over to Russia to make extra money? It sounds like not a good idea in this day and age.
I don't think it's a good idea at all. I mean, Jim, if we look at it right now, we know that Mr. Putin has committed war crimes. We know that what he's doing in Ukraine. We see what he's doing generally in trying to bring down our democratic institutions. We know that nothing's beyond his tactics. So I can tell you that many of us are banned from going to Russia, and we would not feel safe if we were in that country.
Let me ask you about the news in the Senate yesterday that Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona is leaving the Democratic Party to become an independent. What did you think when you heard that? And have you talked to any of your fellow Democrats who are grumbling a little bit about this?
Well, Senator Sinema is very independent. We know that. She has been very constructive in getting legislation to the finish line. I do not believe her decision to identify as an independent will change the organizational issues in the next Congress. The majority, controlled by Democrats, will have a 51-49 ratio for our committees and for our leadership. So it will not affect the organization of the Senate. And I don't think, quite frankly, it'll affect Senator Sinema's activities in the Senate. She works across party lines. She works with Democrats and Republicans. I've worked with her on several issues, and I'm looking forward to working with her in the 117th Congress.
So is this kind of like Angus King, the senator from Maine, is an independent, but he caucuses with the Democrats? Is your understanding that it's going to be essentially that kind of a situation?
It's my understanding that she's seeking her committees through the Democrats, which for all intents and purposes means that we have 51 seats for the committee ratios and be able to report bills out of committee. So it allows us to have the advantage of 51 Democratic senators.
All right. And we know The Democrats were fighting pretty hard for that 51 seat majority. Senator Ben Cardin, thanks very much for your time. We appreciate it as always.
Jim, good to be with you. Have a happy holiday.
And you as well. Thank you.